Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to class 6 of the Nectar of Devotion. We're on chapters 8 and 9, and we'll start with a little kirtan. I'll lead kirtan because Kishori is in Hawaii right now. And then we'll take reflections from the last class last week, and we'll get into chapters 8 and 9. Take a comfortable seat. Deep breath in. Breathing out. Calling on our spiritual teachers, those who lead the way, seeking their blessings to enter the subject matter of the Nectar of Devotion, seeking the blessings of our gurus, of Srila Prabhupada, all the way up to Srila Rupa Goswami, who wrote the Nectar Devotion, to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who taught him the instructions that led to the writing of it, the Panch Tattva, and Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. Oh, musician's audio on. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranilikam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha kalpatarupyascha kripa santupyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Everyone, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everyone together one more time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jai. Okay. Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes. With the torch of knowledge, I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Anchakalpatarupyascha kripasantubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribol. All right, good crew today. Lots of people online, including myself and Kishori. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have double digits. That's awesome. Jai. All right. Lots of nice reflections in the chat. Let's start with any reflections. We were talking last week about the angas of bhakti and what our relationships with them are, like asking people to reflect on, because there's a nice extensive list of the 64 angas, and 5 of them are prime. Does anyone remember any of those 5? The 5 most important angas of bhakti? Even one, you could just shout it out.
Chanting.
Chanting, yes.
Associating with devotees.
Associating with devotees.
Living in a holy place.
Living in a holy place.
Hearing devotional literature.
Hearing devotional literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Nectar of Devotion. You're doing it right now. One more.
Deity worship.
Deity worship. Those are the 5 most important. Beautiful. Any reflections on any of those or any of the other angas, or on other people's comments in the WhatsApp? Anything that stood out from chapters 6 and 7?
You go, Leanne.
Sorry. Oh,
Please.
okay. Thank you. I really liked about when you were talking about Ekadasi and how it's practiced really to simplify your day and create space for your mind and heart to focus on Krishna.
Yeah. Yeah, behind all the rules and regulations, it's really about remembering Krishna and not forgetting him. Positive process and avoiding obstacles to the positive process. So even something like Ekadashi, which can look like very ritualistic, it's like, oh, this is a day we fast, we do this, like it's like the 11th night of the fortnight, and it's like, well, all that boils down to is just you have permission to take a little retreat. I think everyone here has experience with a retreat. You've all been on retreats. Retreats are powerful. It's not to take a retreat. And if you can take a retreat every 2 weeks, how about that? Take a little mini retreat. Ekadashi is just a mini retreat. It's like our whole calendar is set up so you have a retreat every day. There is called the Brahma Muhurta, the earliest hours of the day, right after right before and up till dawn, actually. It's the most auspicious time for spiritual practice. You have full permission to wake up really early and grab the nectar that's floating in the ether. Just chant Hare Krishna, do some service, do some meditation early in the day. That's your little retreat before you go to work, before you have to deal with all the crazy stuff, before anyone else is even up. And you have a little retreat every 2 weeks. You can go and take Ekadashi and just simplify your eating, simplify your whole bodily demands, and tell your body, you know what? Yesterday you're the boss, and tomorrow you're the boss. Today you're the das. Today you're the servant. Today we're serving Krishna, and you can just chill. We're gonna have some carrot pudding or whatever, sliced apples, and we're gonna hear and chant more. And you can take a retreat every year. You can go to Vrindavan or do something during Kartik, wherever you are. You can offer a lamp to Krishna, a special occasion, it's your little retreat. So Ekadashi is just like a little. You have a special dispensation every 2 weeks. Just chill from the material stuff for a little bit. Take the foot off the gas of that a little bit, and press on the accelerator of bhakti a little bit more. You have permission, and see what that feels like. Thank you. Other reflections?
I really read that paragraph about straightforwardness and ordinary dealings and equilibrium and loss and gain, and really thinking about how when we keep Krishna in the center always, that's when we can really achieve some equanimity within that. And was
Right.
reflecting on what you shared in class about, like, if you're lamenting so much so, then you're actually not able to have as much depth in Krishna consciousness. And so I've just been reflecting about that this last week.
Yeah. That Krishna really helps us to develop those qualities. Even just being like a happy, stable, kind of like peaceful human being is really challenging in today's world. This is the age of Kali. It's the age of coral. There's a lot of stuff. We're all carrying stuff, some of us more, some of us less, but it's not easy. And so we're taking shelter of Krishna to even be able to be equipoised and deal with the ordinary course of dealings. And a related point, I think Martine brought this up in the chat, was that the softening of our heart, which happens by being kind to other living entities and living like a civilized life, is ultimately meant to help attract Krishna too. So even just like the basic moral regulations or whatever that you find in moral, ethical, religious, kind of dharmic society, they're all aimed ultimately at deepening our relationship with Krishna. So it's like, it's not outside the realm of devotion to become a happier person and a more functional person, let go of your demons and work on stuff. Because like, that's not exactly the goal of life, but it softens the heart. And it's also difficult to practice devotion when you're being haunted by your material past or karma or desires or whatever. So it's a very organic, very honest process. Thank you. More reflections or comments?
I was going to add, and with something that was said in the reflection from last week, just about how how bhakti is available to anybody, independent of their circumstances, and just how lucky we are to have you as a teacher, because sometimes I decide whether to listen to the recording first or try to read the text. And I tried to read the text, and I'm looking at these 64 principles thinking this is impossible. I can't do this. I can't come to class. And then we have this amazing teacher who puts it all into perspective and summarize these 5 primary items, which was so easy to see 3 of them I'm already doing. So
Yeah.
I felt like really connected. And then just also what you said about Prabhupada saying that everybody should operate at their own capacity, and having just a little bit each day is better than skipping for months and trying to cram it all in. So I appreciate the opportunity so much to have a teacher, because that makes it accessible and available to just someone like me.
Right back at you.
A regular
You're welcome.
person who just
yes.
was not born into, and just even, talking to people and everyone at the retreat, I know most of us were not born into this culture. So clearly it is so available to so many different walks of life. And
I also wasn't born into this culture, and my spiritual teacher also wasn't born into this culture. And so I'm hearing that you feel encouraged in bhakti, And that's good. That means I'm doing my job properly because I feel very encouraged in Bhakti by my teachers. Bhakti is very encouraging. Krishna is very encouraging. It's just, it can be a little scary. It can be a little bit daunting, you know? I'm gonna let you in a little secret. If you ever feel like you're not good enough and that you don't belong, if you have imposter syndrome, just remember that literally everybody on the planet, other than sociopaths, feels like that. Everybody feels like that. It's actually not just you. It's just the situation. It's just the way we are. It's a hard life. It's a hard struggle in the material world. We've been around for a long time. There's a lot of ways in which we can believe we're not good enough. And so, yeah, if you read like a long list of regulations, it's like, oh my God, like I can never do this. So it's not just like we can get discouraged. It's also just we don't know how to put it into context. We'll see that again today. Today, the first chapter we're going to read is negative injunctions, like what not to do, especially in the course of deity worship. I'm going to contextualize that for us. So hopefully it makes more sense and it's approachable and not just like shocking or daunting or off-putting. But the initial reaction to like, especially rules like don'ts, can be really, oh, okay, I'm gonna shrink back into my shell. Yeah, but the whole point of bhakti is that Krishna is extending himself, and it's like not it's not like a thing if you're not good enough. It's especially in this age, it's please come home. Do what you can do. I want you to be engaged. That's Krishna's overriding, especially as Lord Chaitanya, his overriding mood. And that comes through in everything. So I'm glad you're feeling encouraged. Yeah, to be continued on that. It's going to definitely be a topic that we touch on today, I think. Any other reflections before we move into today's content? Tanya, you're unmuted. Did you want to say something?
I didn't realize I was unmuted.
It's
No,
okay.
but I could.
Sure.
I
Krishna's
really,
arrangement.
yeah. Um, I've just really been thinking about the concept that we talked about last time about whatever you do with regularity is so much more powerful. You know, just
Yeah.
habits, you know, everything you do for 21 days that helps you make it a habit, you know, those types of things. And I think that that's, you know, just so important with our sadhana to do something on a regular on a basis to make it more meaningful and powerful.
Krishna says that in chapter 8, verse 8 of the Bhagavad Gita, 8:8. Abhyas yoga yuktena. Abhyas means repetition, it means practice. That's how you get him. He says, you get me through practice. As that chapter is about remembering Krishna at the time of death, which is not like a stereotype process, like I do whatever I want in my life and just like, cool, remember Krishna when I'm dying. It's like you are the accumulation of where you put your heart. And so the practice makes perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Anything else? Yeah, that practice point I think came up for a couple people. It's really relevant because it's a nice way kind of like action item for what we can do right now. It's okay, well, I can't practice at, 100 out of 100 level, but I can practice where I'm at every day. And that's regular, and that's going to pay off for me. Great. Okay, so moving into chapter 8. Chapter 8 is offenses to be avoided. And the chapter is divided into mainly two sections. The first kind of longer section is offenses in the course of deity worship. The second section is about offenses in the chanting of Hare Krishna. So little context here. We've been hearing about the extremely purifying potency of bhakti, how it breaks the cycle of karma, and so much encouragement. As part of that discussion, we also have to hear like what to avoid. But in order to make sense of it, I'm going to explain that there's basically two branches of devotional activity. What's called margas. Marga means path, and one is called the Bhagavat Marga. Bhagavat Marga means hearing, chanting, and remembering. So we're all engaging in Bhagavat Marga Bhakti right now because we're all hearing. We're hearing about nectar of devotion. We're hearing about philosophy. When we're chanting Hare Krishna, when we're in Kirtan, we're chanting Japa. And in the Bhagavat Marg, there are very few rules and regulations. There are some that are there at the end of the chapter on the chanting of Hare Krishna, offenses to be avoided. But actually, Krishna's name is considered even more merciful than Krishna himself. So the direct processes of chanting and remembering and hearing, they don't really come with an extensive list of offenses at all. Where there's a more of a detailed list is in what's called the Pancharatric. Pancharatric means the path of serving Krishna in deity worship. So this means like, okay, either you have a deity or you have like a picture of Krishna and you offer food to Krishna. So the offering of food, you know, is actually part of the Pancharatra. Organizing your life around a schedule, like waking up early, going to bed at a certain time. This is also Pancharatra. Pancharatra is not as much about hearing and chanting, although that's also there, but it's ways in which you can actually engage your senses in Krishna's service throughout your day and with different senses. So for example, you can, yeah, like when you're going to the grocery store, you're thinking, I'm buying food for Krishna, then your shopping experience is now part of your yogic practice because you're thinking like, get the nice thing for Krishna, go home, cook it for Krishna, offer it to him, serve it to the family. It's prasad. I'm distributing prasad. I'm taking prasad. I'm honoring the Lord's remnants. That whole thing is actually Pancharatra. It's part of deity worship. Now, in a temple, that's more formal, and so there are more strictures. There's more like regulation around that. For example, in a temple with an established deity, Krishna gets served his meals at exactly the same time every single day. That doesn't happen. I mean, it can happen, but it doesn't have to happen at home. If it doesn't happen at home, it's not an offense. If it doesn't happen in a temple, it is an offense because that level of that standard of worship is for those who have agreed, like we want to actually worship Krishna like a king. A king means like, yes, your highness, whatever you say, your highness, like absolutely like on the clock. And having served Krishna that way, I can say, you know, having gone on the altar and like helped to dress him and clean and feed, very keeping the body very clean and chanting the Gayatri mantra to be pure and like being really on time. It's very sweet. There's a great deal of potency in it. And for 99% of us now, like we're not really dealing with temple level worship to the extent that there's deity worship, it's in a home practice. So the context to this 8th chapter is that when you hear about offenses to be avoided, a lot of them have to do with deity worship. So they're very specific because they're in the context of deity worship. And a lot of those are for those who are serving the deity on the altar, right? Like there's some things in there about like you have to be very clean when you're serving the deity. That doesn't mean that, oh, if you're not perfectly clean in your body, better not to go to the temple and see the deity, better to go back home and not see the deity. It's like if your service is to go on the altar and like wake up Krishna like I did, you have to take a shower first. If you don't, it's a seva aparad. It's an offense in the course of your seva, your service. So don't take it too seriously when we read some of these things. Like, oh no, like I'm breaking this injunction. We're trying to break some of them down, put them into context. Many of them don't actually apply to you unless you're actually serving the deity. So there's a list of 32 offenses in the matter of serving the deity. Don't enter the temple with your shoes on, right? This is also just there in a lot of older cultures. You know, I was born in Iran, and Iranians don't wear shoes in the house. The Japanese, Chinese, East Asia, South Asia don't wear your shoes in the house. Or if you do, you wear a different set of shoes than you wear outside. And it's just a level of respect. It's like, this is a clean place. Outside we can't control, but we keep it clean here. And so the devotional reflection of that is that, well, this is Krishna's temple. Actually, he's the proprietor of the home. I'm just taking care of it for him. So it's just like keeping it clean. That's the essence of it. Try to observe festivals. Not observing a festival is not good. Observing it is good. A lot of these are negative reflections of positives. So sometimes you're traveling, sometimes you have no association, sometimes you can't do anything. And it's like it's Janmashtami, it's like Krishna's birthday, and like, oh man, try to remember it. Try to think about what that means and read something from the Krishna book. Maybe you can't go to a temple and dress up and have a huge fast and feast full ISKCON event with 100 people chanting in kirtan and the deities gorgeously dressed. You can't do that, okay? But you know, do what you can. Have it wherever you are. Have it in your airplane seat when you're flying across the ocean. Just like take a minute. Like, Krishna, I know it's Janmashtami, but here I am in the fuselage. At least I'll take a second and think of you, and I'll read, you know, about your appearance. So it's like it's time, place, and circumstance. But there's a way in which, just like we heard, it's really powerful to celebrate. There's a way in which if you start to take these things for granted, say, oh yeah, it's Janmashtami, whatever. You know, Krishna's everywhere. I don't care. You know, every day is the same. If you start to take things for granted, just like in a relationship, if you forget your partner's birthday and you take them for granted and you don't like remember the anniversaries and this, then eventually it'll be like, hey, you know, come on, shape up. Do you really care about me anymore? So it's like that with Krishna too. It's nice to kind of pay attention to the details. Love is in the details. Try to be in a clean place before you enter the temple. Okay, so this is an interesting one I'm going to break down here. Number 5, it's that in traditional culture, you don't actually go to the temple when you're grieving. If somebody in your family has died, you don't go to the temple. That injunction specifically has to do more with if you're serving the deity yourself. The reason for that is if you're grieving, imagine your heart is very heavy, right? Just like we wash the body to cleanse it so we can be clean. When you're serving Krishna, you're doing everything as much as possible for his pleasure. But you can have a clean external body, but you can be very contaminated in your mind. I mean, if you're grieving, you can't just be like, okay, cool, get over it. We're here to serve Krishna. It doesn't work that way, you know? I was a pujari. I was serving the deity when my mother passed away. I know, like, you can't just pretend it's okay. Sometimes you have to take some time for yourself. And this is actually part and parcel of that devotional culture that said, while it's also saying if you're a pujari, don't necessarily go serve the deity when you're grieving. It's also saying the positive is that you should be taken care of, you know? You should really go inwards. It doesn't apply so much to like if you're a guest at a temple. That wasn't Prabhupada's mood. He didn't discourage people from going to the temple if they had a personal trial or tribulation. Because for many of us, we don't have an intact spiritual culture. Like, where are we going to lean on? You know, do we have a spiritual community, a spiritual family? We may or may not. And it's like, don't view these rules as or these guides as like strict rules that I have to follow in the abstract. It's like, if this is your solace, if going to see the deity is how you feel connected to Krishna, and you need that more than this is the time when you need it more than anything, then go. You know, that's where you're going to get your connection. Krishna understands that, but it's also a thing of like, you have permission to retreat as much as possible. You know, for example, another related aspect of this in traditional Vaishnava culture, just like it was important to be really pure when you're on the altar, externally and internally, part and parcel of that was that for women, when it was their time of the month that they're menstruating, they actually were supported in all the tasks around the house were taking off of their hands. They were allowed to go inward for at least a couple of days. Husband, kids, friends, family, they'd take over. And the women could just chant, do bhajans, sing songs, go inward, pray. And that would create space for other people to appreciate all they're doing because now they take up that slack. And it gives the woman a chance to go inwards. Energetically, that's a very good time for that. And also energetically, it's a time for the body is actually letting go of things. So it's not considered clean in the external sense. Now, in course of time, this has been considered like, oh, this is the thing where you shouldn't go and serve the deity at this time. You're unclean. You know, it becomes even like almost misogynistic messages get mixed up in that. In the intact spiritual message, in the intact spiritual culture, it's like, okay, without just getting caught up in all the externals, the whole thing was that everybody gets supported. And sometimes it means you're on the altar and sometimes you're not on the altar. Sometimes you're like in the limelight, sometimes you're retreating, but either way, you're supported. So if you're grieving or you're going through something, then you can step back and you can be supported in that. But in the modern context, that may not be practical. You know, like in modern temples, for example, in North America, where a lot of the service to the deities is mostly by women, and there may not be enough, then you can't actually say like, okay, we can't have women on the altar when they're menstruating. There may not be enough people. You may not have enough people to actually manage that. You may have somebody who's grieving, but their main source of solace is the deity, and then they should go and be able to serve the deity. So context makes a big difference here. But these are some of the reasoning, some of the logic behind these kinds of injunctions, and a little bit about the spiritual culture around that supported it, that made it more than just like abstract rules, but part of an intact attempt to help people be supported. Okay. Yeah, so better not to eat in front of the deity. Injunctions like that, it's actually like the idea of being in front of the deity is that you want to cultivate the mentality of reverence. And when we're eating, it's really hard to be reverential when you're like eating. It's possible. I've seen devotees do it, advanced devotees, like they view the prasadam as mercy. But for most of us, myself included, the eating process is like very down to earth time of, feeling reconnected and recharged. And there's a certain amount of sense gratification that's mixed up in that spiritual practice of taking prasad. And like, that's okay. That's fine. No shaming that. But better to like have the place where you worship be a place where it's all about Krishna. Just like they say, um, people who are suffering from insomnia, they shouldn't create a habit of working in their bed or doing other things in their bed as much as possible other than sleeping. Because if they do that, if they create a space where it's just for sleeping, then when it's time to sleep, their body and mind are like, oh yeah, this is my sleeping place. And they know this is not a place where I keep my phone on and I have a screen and I'm watching movies or I'm like on the phone. Like this is a place for sleep, and then they can sleep. Because that's like the order. You've created a structure and the body follows that. So similarly, if the temple is a place where you offer respect and devotion to Krishna, you've created a structure, then you can close the deity doors or you can go to a different room when you're taking your prasadam, because there's like that creates the external support for the mind to understand. Because the mind's like a little child. The mind can understand, like, oh yeah, I'm not here for me, I'm here for Krishna. I'm not here to be pleased, I'm here to serve. And so it's really hard to think about that when you're eating because eating is so pleasing. So better to just kind of like create that space. That's the logic behind that. There's also little detailed injunctions, like when you're in front of a deity, better not to extend your feet toward the deity, like point your feet. This is an etiquette thing, traditional society. Like often people are walking outside in their feet, on their feet, and it's like this is the lowest part of the body. It may be unclean. There's a way in which like kind of extending your feet is a little bit like not so cultured, right? There's like pointing your feet at somebody in that context. So you find like when sitting before the deity, like generally devotees don't do that. There's little details like this, just like for those who are taking up a japa practice, we try not to let our beads touch the ground. It's a certain thing of like, hey, these are sacred, these are holy, keep them clean, keep them in a high place, not in a low place. I don't throw my valuable things on the ground. So there's a way in which there's a little bit of an etiquette that is interesting because it's not really taught so much in the societies we grew up in. Etiquette of how to keep things clean, how to be like respectful, etiquette of observing like seniority. Sometimes in Vaishnav culture, when we're greeting devotees, you'll notice like very cultured devotees will like give respect to the seniors and elders first and make sure they're taken care of. And are there elderly, are there women, are there children, people that need to be protected, and then taking care of everybody. But there's also a way in which like, yeah, these vulnerable populations are taken care of, and the seniors and those who have more experience in bhakti are given reverence and respect. So these finer points of etiquette, you can find them sometimes in these rules of deity worship. And so that's why they're a little more subtle, a little more specific, right? Don't lie before the deity. Don't talk very loudly in front of the deity. There's actually like an injunction, don't give instructions or chastise somebody in front of the deity. This is also my realization, is having broken that injunction, is if you take the position of an authority, then you're automatically creating the structure of like, I'm in charge, right? And that's really a fine line between like taking charge of a situation and making yourself like the boss and the man, which is our basic flaw. We're basically trying to be a little god. So chastising somebody in front of the deity is actually like almost taking their place. taking Krishna's place. Like I'm actually gonna like be in charge here. And I'm not, it also creates an unpleasant situation. Imagine if, you know, you invite a friend over for dinner. You invite your, you know, your friend or whatever over to dinner with your family. And as soon as you sit down, you start arguing with your mom. How does your friend feel? Pretty uncomfortable, right? So how does Krishna feel if there's like an argument happening in front of him? Not so nice. We're trying to create like a sweet atmosphere for him. So if there has to be some like, you know, difficult conversation, best to take it outside and be like let's go outside and talk about this. Best not to like create a scene in front of people you care about, and Krishna is the supreme person we care about. So it's just a little bit of etiquette like that. Ultimately, a lot of this stuff is like supporting ourselves in remembering that the deity is a person and that Krishna is a person. He's not just an idea or an abstraction. He's actually a person with feelings. And so doing that is really helpful because we're suffering from kind of an impersonalism, kind of like a forgetting that other people are really persons and I'm the only person. Sometimes I think that in my ego, forgetting that God is a person, and just kind of remembering that, being supported and remembering that helps us. So these rules are there so we don't violate that. We don't mistreat him. We learn to become sensitive. As one great devotee put it, uh, the whole universe is cosmic sensitivity training, right? It's cosmic sensitivity training. And for Vaishnavas, all the rules and regulations, if you're ever feeling like you don't understand a rule, well, first of all, please, you know, talk to somebody who has more experience. Maybe I myself or someone else can help you understand how to contextualize that rule or regulation. But in the general sense, view it as sensitivity training. That's really the curriculum. It's sensitivity training. You know, if you don't understand why I shouldn't chastise somebody in front of the deity, it's like, think about, if I don't do that, how does that create sensitivity in me to view Krishna with more respect? You know, and chances are the answer will start to come to you, right? Don't quarrel or fight before the deity. Don't eulogize or praise anyone before the deity. This is an interesting one because there's one injunction: you should always offer respects to your guru as soon as you see them, right? And you should do so audibly. You should bow down. If your spiritual master enters the room, you should bow down and offer respects. And there's another injunction that if you're in front of the deity, you should not offer any like glorification of somebody else, because it's the idea is that Krishna is like in charge. Krishna is actually the supreme. So how do you reconcile that? It's actually a gray area, you know. But in these circumstances, you have to consider that Krishna understands our mood. For example, my spiritual teacher, I asked him this question. He said, "I'm glad you're asking it. My personal request is that you don't pay obeisances to me in front of Krishna, but you can fold your hands like this if you want to." And I've seen other disciples of him do pay their obeisances, and it's okay because, you know, if you think about it, every ISKCON temple, every Hare Krishna temple that Srila Prabhupada established, what's the first song we sing in the morning? It's the Gurvashtakam. We're glorifying the guru or gurus. It's like the deity doors open, there's Gaurnitai, there's Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, Radha Krishna, and as soon as we see them, we start singing Sangsara Dava Nalalita Loka. You know, Vande Guru Shri Charanadavindam, glories to the guru. It's like, on one level, that's kind of weird. We're glorifying the guru, but actually it's not, because we're actually just appreciating how Krishna is extending himself through the mercy agent of the guru. So sometimes there's a reconciliation between apparently contradictory rules. You can pay obeisances to the guru and understand them as an extension of Krishna. You can not manifestly pay obeisances, understanding that maybe it'll embarrass my guru because after all, they're a devotee of Krishna. They don't want to be like on a pedestal here in front of Krishna. Either way is okay. It's more like where your heart is. And more injunctions. Eat that which is offered to Krishna. This is actually deity worship. Just like if you want to make spiritual advancement, you should eat that which is offered to Krishna. So the negative of that is eating something that's not offered to Krishna. Sometimes people say like, well, you know, I want to offer Krishna the best things, and I can't Like part of my diet is not perfectly in the mode of goodness, so I don't know what to do. And so, for that, it's like maybe you don't make a full formal offering of the thing that you're still attached to that's not exactly in the mode of goodness, but you still can remember that it's coming from Krishna, because it is. It's not coming from somebody else. There's no other source. One time in Paris, Srila Prabhupada with some devotees came across somebody who was drinking in public. They were like, and not in a good state. They were just homeless, really suffering from substance, addiction. And Srila Prabhupada, I may be mixing up my stories here, but the essence of it is Srila Prabhupada said, they can also make a spiritual advancement if every time they drink their wine, they remember that this taste is the taste of Krishna. It's coming from Krishna. That is a profoundly liberal statement if you think about it. Srila Prabhupada, here he is, this great pure devotee coming from Vrindavan. He's seeing like a homeless person lying in the gutter drinking booze. And Prabhupada saying, yes, they can also make spiritual advancement if with every pull from their jug, they're thinking this is coming from Krishna. It's like, okay, because it is. It's not coming from Krishna. So wherever you're at, try to connect to Krishna. And there's a very tangible way in which we have to eat. So if you eat things that are in the mode of goodness, offer them to Krishna first and eat the remnants. It's actually very purifying. Don't deride the demigods. Whatever's been cooked, offer it first, etc., etc. There's more injunctions here for those, especially who serve the deity. You should turn on the light before you enter the deity room. You should make some sound before you enter the deity room. Offer incense with a flower. Don't just offer incense alone. These are very specific things. Sometimes devotees read these injunctions and they're like, oh, wow, like I'm actually making offenses and I don't know what to do about it. And it's like, or they'll be paralyzed by guilt or confusion. And so the context I like to present is, this is what's called seva aparad. Aparad means that which takes us away from radha, that which takes us away from worship. An offense, an aparadha, in the course of seva. But in order for it to be an offense in the course of seva, service, it means you're trying to do service, right? That's the thing. You can't cause an offense in the course of service unless you're actually trying to do service. So the very fact that you're trying to do service means you're in the game. You're already trying to be of service. So sometimes devotees get really caught up in calling themselves out or each other out on how you should do this service better or that service better. It's like, maybe, but they're trying to do service, right? In a universe full of people who are trying to serve themselves, somebody's trying to serve Krishna. That's the context. If in that service, there's a way they can do it better, it can be refined, so be it. That's why these injunctions are there, so we can learn how to refine it. But at least they're trying to be of service. So nobody beat yourself up. Some of these things are actually not even really, I don't think it's in this chapter, maybe another chapter, but there's one, yeah, here it is. One should not enter the temple wearing garments of red or blue color. One time the devotees read this with the Srila Prabhupada, they said, are we supposed to not wear red or blue before the deity? And Prabhupada said, this doesn't apply. This is a cultural context thing of like, those are considered very bold colors. You don't want to be like the bold, taking charge, I'm the center of attention kind of person in front of the deity. That color scheme no longer makes any sense, either in India or anywhere else in the world. People wear red, blue. Like if you go to India, their saris are every color mixed together. Don't worry about it. Some of these things don't actually apply. Like that one literally doesn't apply. Some of them do, and you can try to refine your activities more. Some of them are applicable if you're on the altar and you're specifically serving the deity. Make sure your body is very clean to this extent, to this level, etc., etc. And even if you're guilty of a seva aparad, the understanding is sincere chanting of Hare Krishna, sincere practice of service in the Bhagavat Marga, hearing, chanting, remembering, purifies us of the especially unintentional offenses caused by in sincere service in seva. So if you're like, yeah, but I've been pointing my feet at the deity for years, or this or that or whatever, it's like, yeah, but are you chanting Hare Krishna with sincerity? Krishna has forgiven it already. The course of the offenses caused in seva, you try to rectify, try to purify, try to come to a higher standard, but ultimately the thing that really you can lean on is the chanting, that Krishna is available in his name and he's purifying us of any any offense caused in service. So with that being said, we're going to move into the non-operad offenses in the chanting. These are considered more serious because chanting Hare Krishna sincerely purifies us of any offense caused in service. But what if you're making offenses in your chanting? It's like that's something to really watch out for. So we'll get into that discussion, but let's pause. Is there anything I said that you have questions around, or are there any things you want to comment on or that stuck out?
I just had a question, just
Yeah,
about one that you skipped over. I was just curious about it. It said,
sure.
one should not be charitable to beggars before the deity. So many other things
Right.
make sense, but is that because no food or money should?
I'll be honest with you, I don't have a 100% clear answer on that. I can ask around. I can tell you that the giving of charity is a very important part of Vaishnav culture. And even aside from Vaishnav culture, just like in general Indian culture, it's very good karma to give in charity to a worthy person. My guess, and it is a guess, so don't take it as like the answer. I can ask around and see if other senior devotees have more of a clear answer. Is like when you're giving in charity, there's a way in which you can kind of become proud. And you're thinking like you're in charge, I'm the maintainer of this person. Maybe you like do that outside, maybe do it in another place. Just like you don't create a fight in front of the deity, you don't support your false ego by being like, I'm the maintainer of this person in front of the deity. That's my sense. It's something like that probably, but I don't know exactly why, and I can't say definitively. But we know it's not a problem to give in charity because it's a good thing, especially for grihastas, people who make money. That's how you purify your money, is by giving it to a worthy cause. It should be a worthy cause, as the 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita points out. If you give in charity to like bad causes, it just creates like medium karma or worse. But good charity is great. It's just like, maybe it's a time, place, and circumstance thing. Maybe not in that time, in that context. I can tell you what's definitely safe charity is if you give Krishna's prasadam. If you give some devotional artifact like maybe Krishna's garland or Krishna's prasad, or you invite them and you make them comfortable in Krishna's temple, you treat them as a guest like that. That's very safe to do. But like something else, I don't know. Maybe in a different context is better. Any other questions or comments or anything that stood out?
Can you hear me? Can you hear?
Yeah.
Hi, very well. I love you said that even if you're committing committing an operata, say that you're still in the game because you're doing seva.
Yeah. Because you're doing
And so
seva.
to remember that and not be too hard on your.
You can't cause seva aparad without doing seva. So you're already in the game. Yeah. Nice. Thank you.
I'll chime in now
Keith.
too.
Please.
That reflection of that Prabhupada could say, like, even if someone is drinking wine, right, that they still have, I think that's, especially for someone who's, deep in the world of substance abuse disorder and innovative treatments right now, that gives hope, right? And I think also with prison work and knowing, how that impacts people, that just having Krishna at the center, right? And I think it takes away the kind of stigma that a lot of people put on people who are struggling too.
Yeah.
So even in that moment that he was able to see, like, through the struggle, it doesn't mean that they can't reach that spiritual enlightenment.
And many did, and still are, Srila Prabhupada came to the West. He stayed in the Bowery in the mid-60s, and he was living among like people who were really strung out on heroin. And it was the middle of a time when, consequence-free sexual and substance intaking activity was like considered the path to enlightenment, and it was creating a lot of trouble for people. But that's the population that the devotees of Krishna came from. The Hare Krishna devotees, the Hare Krishna people, Bhakti yogis came from there. And still to this day, many people give credit to Bhakti as a way of getting free from substance abuse. In fact, the the 12 steps were created by bhakti yogis in the Christian tradition. The whole taking shelter of higher power, the essence of that movement is basically like it's about taking shelter. It's about actually receiving help from higher power, however one understands that higher power, so that it is very empowering. It is very bhakti is very accessible. And Srila Prabhupada wasn't like saying, oh, this person's, it's good for them to drink. They clearly were addicted, but in their addiction, whatever they thought they were getting from that, if they were able to connect that this is coming from higher power, then they could follow that thread of purity back to that source and let go of those lower things and come to something more healthy.
Sometimes it's hard to see that, with the level. I mean, certainly if Srila Prabhupada was walking the streets now, it wouldn't be wine that he was seeing, right? It's
Right.
heroin or heroin or Suboxone. I wonder if the same would apply.
Well, we can understand philosophically it's the same thing. The idea of recognizing that whatever condition we're in, whatever we think we're getting from something, it's ultimately coming from Krishna, right? That's always true, right? But we may be getting it from something in some mode of nature. Somebody's getting some experience from healthy vegetarian food. Someone's getting experience from like spicy food in the mode of passion, whatever of mixed quality. Someone else is doing something in the lower modes of nature. Someone else is getting, like, as you said, they're suffering from addiction to hard drugs. Those things aren't all on the same level. Some are more damaging than others. But the principle remains that we can understand that I'm not independently satisfying my senses, right? The verse that Prabhupada was referring to was the one in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, Rasoham apsu, I am the taste of water. Prabhupada said, if this person reflects that the taste that they're receiving from their drink is also Krishna, it's coming from him, then that is the beginning of a devotional relationship with Krishna. That's the beginning of a devotional relationship with the divine. See, the idea that we can independently satisfy our senses is deeply problematic, right? And part of the way out, if we're talking about recovery, it's a bigger conversation, but part of the way out of addiction into recovery is accepting higher power. And so Prabhupada was indicating that letting Krishna in consciously, even in our most degraded situation, opens the door for getting help to let go of the things that are really hurting us. So I feel like he would. I mean, Srila Prabhupada literally, in his first place he stayed in New York City, when he tried to leave you could read in the Prabhupada Lilamrita, the biography of his pastimes, to get down the stairs, he had to walk over people who were heroin addicts, sleeping in the stairwell. So that was something within his realm of experience. It was a pretty tough place to be, the Bowery in 65. All right, more reflections. Anything before we go to Namaparad, holy name? Okay, so as Prabhupada writes, he says, when a person becomes an offender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, he can still be delivered simply by taking shelter of the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In other words, the chanting of Hare Krishna is beneficial for eradicating all sins. But if one becomes an offender to the holy names of the Lord, then he has no chance of being delivered. The idea is that it's really helpful to understand what the offenses are in the chanting of Hare Krishna and to avoid them, because it's not like if you're not chanting perfectly, qualitatively and quantitatively right away, you're committing offenses. But there are some big level, higher level ways in which we can actually have usually philosophic misconceptions and misalignments. And if you have those, it can get in the way. For example, if you're causing offenses to the devotees, that's not good, because devotees are actually the people who are sharing the Maha Mantra with all of us. And so devotees are really dear to Krishna. It's good to have good relationships with the devotees. It's a thing of like also, yeah, so that's the first offense. Another one is to actually consider the names of demigods or the other living entities who are empowered representatives to be equal to Krishna or independent of him, you know? The idea is that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and there are so many empowered representatives and like demigods and so forth, but they're not all on the same level, right? It's not that you can chant anything or anyone's name. If that were true, then I could chant any made-up mantra. It's all sound, but they're not on the same level. So it's important to understand, like, when we're aiming at the source, we want to actually, like, especially in our heart, like, really be aiming at the source and not trying to, as the Muslims put it, worship the creator, not the creation. That's one little mantra I heard from a Muslim friend of mine. Disobeying the orders of the spiritual master. So especially if you have a formal relationship with your guru, usually spiritual master is very careful not to give direct instruction to one who can't follow. But if you have trouble following an instruction, you should follow up with your spiritual teacher. Don't just whimsically abandon the instructions or neglect them, because that's going to constitute an offense. Because our relationship with the mantra, for those who are taking an initiation, is actually connected through the guru. Don't disrespect the spiritual literature, because the spiritual literature is what actually transmits the glories of the holy name. Sometimes devotees will like look down on other traditions with other literature, and it's like, that's not actually a good idea to do, because it's part of a whole project to uplift everybody. Some spiritual literature, even in our own tradition, is aimed for those in lower modes of nature, because they can't follow the injunctions of those literatures that are aimed for people in the higher modes of nature. Don't look down your nose at them. Those shastras, don't disrespect them. They all have their audience. They have their context. Number 5 is to give some mundane interpretation. That's actually number 6, to give some interpretation on the holy names. Sometimes people like outsmart themselves and try to create like some fancy way in which they give it a little purport on what the Maha Mantra means or whatever. Not necessary. If you want to hear more about it, our great teachers who have dedicated their lives to chanting have spoken. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Prabhupada have given purports. Rupa Goswami. We talked about Rupa Goswami's Namashtaka, several verses glorifying the holy name. You can read those things, those songs and purports. Considering the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. Consider, if one doesn't really know what to make of the Hare Krishna mantra or chanting, that's okay. But what chance of experiencing Krishna do we have if while we're chanting, we actually actively condemn the process as imagination? There has to at least be a suspension of disbelief. Try to run the experiment, right? This is like what I consider a litmus test for someone's sincerity. If they're ready to try to practice chanting, not that they have to believe me in everything I'm saying about what the mantra is or how it works or what Shastra says or what it did for me. You don't have to buy that. You know, it's just true for me. It's what Shastra says, but at least for yourself, are you ready to try it in your own life without having your own idea that you already know everything about it? Because if you do have your own idea, you kind of create a little room, a little box, and you live in that box. And even in the realm of science, it's not good science. You don't run a proper experiment by making up your mind beforehand. You have to be open to the results. So if you consider that the whole thing is imagination to begin with, you're not giving Krishna a signal that he's welcome. So he's not going to make himself accessible to you in the mantra. Number 8 is to consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as good karma. It's beyond good karma. Good karma means something you do to create a more peaceful situation for yourself in the world. Like, there are different injunctions in scripture. If you give in charity in this way, if you dig a well, if you plant some trees, if you help a little old lady cross the street, you get these beneficial results. And this is be good for you because you'll have better health or this or that, wealth, sex, money, power. And those things are in Shastra. You can, because some people are attached to those things. So we can view the chanting of Hare Krishna as, oh yeah, this is good karma too. No, it's not. It's not for those who want to stay in the world and create good karma. That's like a tertiary side effect. It's actually about developing love for Krishna. And so don't cheapen the process by having it be just like a mercantile relationship. I chant your name, Krishna. Give me, right? Give me the material stuff. Number 9 is to, especially for the gurus, don't initiate people who don't have faith in the chanting. For this, don't try to create numbers. Don't try to like bring people into the sangha or like boost your numbers or your own, self-esteem, or like convert people who are not ready and don't have faith. It's an offense. Don't preach the glories to those who are not ready to receive it. And number 10 is to maintain your material attachments. This is a very interesting one. It's not an offense in chanting to have material attachments. Everybody has material attachments, but it's an offense to actively hold on to them over and over and over and over again, because we're hearing about how they're just material attachments and they're not good for us. So you want to make some forward progress, even a little bit at a time, in letting go of those attachments. If we greedily and stubbornly hold on to our material attachments, making no attempt whatsoever, leaving Krishna no space at all to pry it out of our hands, then we're not telling Krishna that we're sincere about developing a relationship with him. You can be like, Krishna, I have all these attachments. I'm not even ready to let go of them, but I know they're not good for me. And then that's humble. That's real. That's okay. That means you're like letting go of that previously, that death grip you had on all your material attachments. This is the beginning of letting go. But if you're kind of duplicitously chanting, while at the same time, like stubbornly holding on to all your material desires, thinking like, I don't ever have to let go of these things. They're perfect. They're fine. This is me. I'm allowed to just always forever yell at people in traffic. Road rage is totally fine. If you're just like holding on to these things, it's like you're holding yourself back. And the last one was number 7. I skipped it. Number 7 is also a very egregious one. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting. There's statements in Shastra, for example. There's a statement, the holy name is so powerful that it can purify a number of sins even greater than one can ever actually commit. You can never commit enough sins that the holy name can't purify it. It's so powerful. So somebody who's insincere can read that and say, oh, perfect, great. I got my little get out of jail free. I'll just chant Hare Krishna and do whatever damn thing I want. And it's right here. I can do whatever I want. I'm clean. That's not good. That's really not good, because you're trying to game the system. You're trying to take advantage of Krishna's merciful attitude. You're trying to take advantage of his sweetness. It's like if you're in a relationship with somebody and they're so devoted to you, they're so dedicated to you, I can cheat on them, I can lie to them, they'll always come back. That's an awful attitude to have, right? Don't do that to Krishna. So it doesn't mean like, if I'm chanting Hare Krishna, but I'm still attached to something that's not good for me or is even sinful, it's like taking me away from Krishna, then I'm committing namaparad. No, are you deliberately doing that, thinking I'll chant and I'll purify myself? Is that your attitude? Like I can do whatever I want, the chanting will purify me. That's the attitude of insincerity. That's not good. That gets in the way of the mercy. That really gets in the way of the relationship. So these kind of big level things, if you can avoid these and just chant and try to be attentive, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, the root cause of all the other offenses is inattentive chanting. And the root cause of avoiding all the offenses is attentive chanting. If you just try to chant attentively with sincerity, without trying to cheat the system or game the system, and you have a clear idea of Krishna and respect for him, respect for his devotees, respect for the Shastra, you'll be just fine. And that the chanting itself will purify you of any other incidental aparadhs or offenses caused in your service. And that's it for chapter 8. All right. Jai. Any comments or questions before we go to chapter 9?
I loved how you just said chanting doesn't purify you, because that makes me think of Christianity, of like how often I have felt that people will go into, absolve themselves of their sins.
Yeah.
Or in the confessional, and like that washes it away, and they go right back out and do the same exact thing all over again.
Yeah. And it's not just a Christian thing, it's very much a human thing. It's a really kind of it's an unfortunate tendency. The sixth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam talks about this early on, first chapter. There's a discussion there wherein Shukadeva Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj, the hero of the Bhagavatam, he says, I don't get this. He says to his teacher Shukadeva, I don't understand. It seems like people, they're like elephants. Elephants get in the water. You see on the National Geographic, they get in the water, they get all nice and clean. What happens when they get off the water? They just splash the mud on themselves. Of course, we're not shaming elephants. I'm sure the mud is very cooling. There's a nice biological reason for that, but it's kind of awkward. You just got clean and you're just getting dirty again. So there's a way in which we can view this kind of like confessional spirituality. It's like, yeah, 6 days a week, do whatever I want. Seventh day, I apologize, repent. Christians do it, Vaishnavas can do it, anybody can do it. Not good, not helpful. There's this sincerity factor is there. So fundamentally what's happening in that kind of situation is they're viewing spirituality, spiritual practice as a process of formal atonement. There's a word for this in Sanskrit. Forgetting it right now. But bhakti isn't about formally atoning for something. It's not about like jumping through the hoops, doing the formula, doing the thing, paying the price so that you're okay again. Get right with God. It's like, it's about developing love for God and having a natural organic flow of relationship connection. And part of that is not damaging a relationship with things that are harmful. But it's not a ritualistic thing of like, okay, because I've done wrong, I have to do this. I have to chant my Hail Marys, or I have to pay obeisances, or I have to, we talked about this last week. I think the fundamental act of atonement is itself bhakti. Bhakti itself is the highest form of purificatory practice, and when hand in hand that is a sincerity to practice it without trying to game the system. So yeah, thank you. Any other reflections? All right. Chapter 9, further considerations of devotional principles. So there's another series of sub articles, and in each one, every topic, there's some shastra, some evidence, some scripture. So one is hearing blasphemy. You really don't tolerate hearing people speak ill about the Lord or about devotees. If you can, you should assess whether you can answer it. Otherwise, just leave the place, right? It's considered so serious that in some places Shastra says better that you should just plug your ears, or better you should die rather than hear that. It's so damaging to be around people who are just like aggressively attacking. Like if you hear somebody aggressively attacking devotees, it's totally okay to be like, you know what? I gotta go. I just remembered, I promised my grandma I gotta curl her hair. Promised my dog I gotta walk it to the store. Lie. Just leave. Change the subject. Go. Because that's not the kind of vibration you want in your heart and in your ears. If you can't deal with them, if it's not your service to deal with them, if they're not dealable with, they're unreasonable, just leave. Because it's so painful and damaging. So that's an injunction. And if you can answer them, especially if somebody is saying things that are incorrect or improper in a public place, and other people can be persuaded by that, you can speak up and be like, actually, no, it's not like this. That's incorrect, and this is why. Sometimes people will say like, actually, spirit, all religion is the source of all violence and damage in the world, and it's like, no, that's not true. People are pretty good at being horrible to each other in the name of things that other than God. And yes, we also agree that religious violence is not okay, right? But it's not correct to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's perfectly fine to say, and it's a good thing to say because it's right. Accepting flower garlands is some nice shastra here. That actually just accepting the the remnants of Krishna's enjoyed flower garlands, that which he's worn, it can itself just liberate you, take you out of the universe, take you out of material life. You won't be attacked by the spell of the material energy, just like eating prasadam. This statements about dancing before the deity. Narada Muni says, from the body of any person who claps and dances before Krishna's deity, showing manifestations of ecstasy, all the birds of sinful activities fly away upward. Just as by clapping the hands, one can cause many birds to fly away. Similarly, the birds, the allegorical birds of all sinful activities who are sitting on the body, can be made to fly away simply by dancing and clapping before the deity of Krishna. So in essence, actually, Lord Chaitanya's movement, Srila Prabhupada summarized it as chanting, dancing, feasting, and a little philosophy. It's those four things. Really simple. So dancing in kirtan is really powerful. Dancing for Krishna's pleasure. Dancing is a really natural, organic thing that we do. If you think about it, it has no reason, has no purpose. It serves no practical purpose other than expression of joy. So if you turn that natural function that we all do, like babies do it, kids do it, practically, I mean, I've seen like rabbits and dogs dance. Like it's just an overflow of joy. If you just turn that to Krishna and you just dance for him, it's very powerful. So there's statements about it. Chant, dance. Bowing down, power of bowing down, standing up to receive the Lord. When you see the Lord coming by in procession, or if there's a Rath Yatra festival, standing up to offer respects, going to the temple. There's a statement, persons who attempt to visit the holy places are actually glorified. By such traveling activities, they can pass over the desert of material existence. That includes going to the temple. Obviously, if you go on pilgrimage to like Vrindavan, that's great. But if you also go to like, your local temple, you go to the Bhakti house. We have some people who've taken the pilgrimage to the Bhakti house right now. They're in front of Mahaprabhu. You have qualified. This is actually very powerful. That means like getting in the car, driving to the Bhakti house, that was a pilgrimage. Yesterday, I got a ride from Allison to Montreal. She dropped me off at the temple there because I stayed there overnight with Radha Manohar and their devotees. I woke up from the morning program and I was explaining to her, like, I'm really grateful. And she was not Allison Chalnick, the other Allison, but she was like, you're very welcome. And I said, actually, you're supporting my pilgrimage because I'm here and I get to go to the morning program tomorrow. I get to chant, and I did in front of Radha Manohar and wake up and dance and take prasad. And actually, we got her some prasad too because there was leftover, because that's just the devotees. There's always prasad. Gotta love them. And that car ride was a pilgrimage. So you can declare that at the border. Anything to declare, yeah, we're making a pilgrimage. We're here to see Krishna. It's very powerful, very purifying. Circumambulating the deity, actually walking around. Just like you can walk around Govardhan Hill, you can walk around the deity. So one practice I had in the temple in Denver was during the japa period, if I was falling asleep, I would go outside and I would chant walking around the whole temple property. It takes me about a quarter of a round. So 4 ambulations, it's like a full round or something. And it's like, it's a way to use your feet. I mean, it's a God-given ability most of us have. So you can use that. You can walk around the Bhakti house. You can do a little japa walk. You can if you have a deity or a picture of Krishna in your home, then when you go for a walk, go walk around the temple, walk around the neighborhood, come back to where you started and think like, I'm walking around you, Krishna. I'm considering you the center of my universe. You're like the sun and I'm just orbiting you. This is devotion. This is a devotional activity. It's called parikrama, walking around. The Skanda Purana says if during Chaturmasya, a special period in the summertime, if you circumambulate the temple of Vishnu 4 times, it is understood you have traveled all over the universe. You've seen all the places the Ganges waters is flowing, and you'll be quickly raised to the platform of devotional service. Archana, deity worship. So more evidence about the powers of deity worship, rendering service to the Lord, the glories of singing. The Linga Purana says, a Brahmana who is constantly engaged in singing the glories of the Lord is surely elevated to the same planet as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna appreciates this singing even more than the prayers offered by Lord Shiva. And then there's a statement about Sankirtan. Sometimes we hear this movement is called the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. So Sankirtan, kirtan means to glorify, San means with. There's a prefix, means with, congregationally, getting together. And especially, but not exclusively, this means Nam Sankirtan, glorifying the name. So getting in kirtan and chanting together, it's actually Sankirtan. It's actually like, there's more than one of us. We're all getting together and chanting together. That's Nam Sankirtan. But Sankirtan can also be chanting the glories of the Lord. It can be like Leela Sankirtan, talking about his pastimes. It can be Guna Sankirtan, talking about his qualities. Right now, we're engaging in Sankirtan. We're glorifying the bhakti process. We're hearing about Sankirtan. That's itself Sankirtan. So there's so many statements about the power of Sankirtan, of Krishna's names, of the Shastra reading out loud, what we're doing right now. So Srila Prabhupada uses this logic. He says, there are many songs about the Lord's activities, like the Brahma Samhita, the Narada Pancharatra. These songs can be heard by any person, and they can easily get out of the clutches of material contamination by hearing them. There should be no difficulty in hearing these songs of God. They're coming down from many, many millions of years ago, and people are still taking advantage of them. So why at this time should one not take full advantage and thus become liberated? Jai. Japa. There are statements about the power of japa. Srila Prabhupada once said that 90% of our spiritual advancement comes through our japa. It's a fundamental process. And he talks here that uttering the Mahamantra very softly, only for one's own hearing, is called japa. Chanting the same mantra loudly for being heard by all others is called kirtan. The Mahamantra can be used for japa and kirtan also. Japa is practiced for personal benefit. Kirtan is practiced for the benefit of all others also who may hear. And so there's a nice also section under submission. Srila Prabhupada talks about different ways in which we can offer prayers and ask Krishna for help in approaching him. He talks about one thing called lalasamayi, desiring some perfectional stage. Means at the stage of understanding our relationship with Krishna, we can aspire to be reinstated in a specific position, in a certain relationship with him, right? Prabhupada quotes from the Padma Purana where one devotee says, "My Lord, just like young boys and young girls naturally are attracted to each other. Anybody ever been to like a chaperone or something on a class trip? You know, you don't have to teach the boys and girls. At a certain period, they just become attracted to each other. I had a friend who was like a chaperone at the Grand Canyon, and he had to remind the kids they were at the Grand Canyon because they kept just like hanging out, looking at each other and flirting. And they were probably 12 or 13 years old. And it's like naturally they're attracted to each other. It's overflowing. You have to like pull them back. And the devotee is praying, just like the mind is naturally attracted that way, may I please naturally be attracted to you spontaneously. This is an expression of feeling, a prayerful feeling. So these are statements of submission, right? And Srila Prabhupada says something very beautiful here. He says, after talking about the ways in which devotees pray to become advanced in devotion, to let go of their material attachments, one devotee says, when will that day come when on the bank of the Yamuna I shall become just like a madman and continue to chant your holy name while incessant tears flow from my eyes, right? Prabhupada says, in other words, one should learn how to cry for the Lord. One should learn how to cry for the Lord. One should learn this small technique. And they should be very eager and actually cry to become engaged in some particular type of service. This is called laulya, or spiritual greed. And such tears are the price for the highest perfection. If one develops this laulya, or excessive eagerness for meeting and serving the Lord in a particular way, that is the price to enter into the kingdom of God. Otherwise, there is no material calculation for the value of the ticket by which one can enter the kingdom of God. The only price for such entrance is laulya lalasamayi, or desire and great eagerness. So, very beautiful. It's part of why we hear the prayers and like the Shikshastakam and other devotees like Lord Chaitanya, because they're full of powerful spiritual desires, actually. In fact, I'm listening to a two-part lecture by a wonderful devotee called Radhika Ramana Prabhu. He's a professor actually in Utah. His legal name is Dr. Ravi Gupta, I think. And he's talking about the power of prayer to Krishna and what we can learn from the prayers of the devotees in the Bhagavatam. And it's really helpful for us because it shows how to bare your heart to Krishna, how to take account for your mistakes, and how to like ask for support, and how to ask for coming to him at the professional stage, how to become eager for that, how to cry for it. This is very much our path. Partaking of prasadam, the power of taking prasad, drinking the charanamrita. The charanamrita is Prabhupada says in the morning, while the Lord is being washed, charanamrita is obtained. It's scented with perfumes and flowers, and the water comes gliding down through his lotus feet and is collected and mixed with yogurt. In this way, this charanamrita not only becomes very tastefully flavored, but also has tremendous spiritual value. Any temple of Krishna, you'll find have a little container with the sweet milk or yogurt, sugar, charanamrita that was used to bathe his body, and it's very purifying. You could just take a little drop and offer gratitude for it. That itself is such a powerful process. Smelling the incense that's offered to the Krishna deity, smelling the flowers that are offered, touching the deity if you're qualified to as a pujari in a temple, seeing the deity is so powerful. So lots of nice statements in this 9th chapter about what happens by the practice of these different angas of bhakti, what the results are. Observing the arti ceremony celebrations. And that's it. That's the 9th chapter. So let's take any reflections, anything that stood out, anything that you wanted more exploration around, or you just heard something that stood out for you, you can remember it, you got there in your notes, a one-liner comment, or you have a question.
I just love the statement you kind of started with by saying love is in the details. And I think,
Yeah.
through all the things we talked about today, it's, not saying you're a bad person if you don't do all of these things, but the more you do, the more you pay attention to the details, the more you like, oh, the altar is a little off. Let me straighten it. Like all those little things, those little tiny little acts help you grow closer to Krishna because you're personalizing that relationship, and you're actually like making it almost like you're physicalizing it, if that's a word, and kind of making
Yeah.
it of your everyday. So the love is in the details. I think that's a really beautiful way to say, not that like you're bad if you don't do these things, but the more you pay attention to all these little things that Rupa Goswami is sharing with us, that will help you even quicker deepen your attraction and love to Krishna.
Absolutely. That's why it's sensitivity training. And it can really, we have to watch out for that part of us that when we hear these rules, we think like, I'm being judged, or I should judge myself, or I should judge others, look down on them for like not practicing great or whatever. They could do better, I could do better, or I'm not good enough. It's not why these rules are there. They're there as opportunities for us to deepen, become more sensitive and aware. So when we see something could be better, that's great. That's to be celebrated, because now we can start to make it a little better. And my spiritual teachers community in Silicon Valley, they have a mantra: ABS, always better service. Always try to find something. Every month they get together and they try to find 3 things that could be better. And the rule is it has to be really small, really manageable, really small. Things that can be really tiny things that can be better that month. And just name it and make a plan. Or if you can start making it better, do it better now. It can be the tiniest little thing, and just doing that trains the mind to start thinking about Krishna's pleasure. And then you find that Krishna will empower you to notice how things can be better in this way or better in that way. And then you start to take responsibility, and something becomes your service. And when something becomes your service, then it really starts to really grow. Then you start to take it seriously. Like when you start to take a service on and it's your service, then you want it to be really nice for Krishna. It's just like, I think she'll probably put it this way: ownership turns sand into gold, right? It's the opposite of that. If you look at how there's a There's something called the tragedy of the commons. That which is considered public territory, public domain, public property is always trashed. Why? Because no one takes responsibility for it. Park, place that nobody has any particular, no one person runs or takes responsibility for that place. It's everybody's, which means it's nobody's. Nobody actually looks after it. Then it's like dirty. It's abandoned. It run down, derelict. But if that's your park, if that's your car, you own that. Ownership turns sand to gold means you like find the ways it can be nice. We all do that. We do that with our lives. We do it with our room. Our room, my room is my room, right? It's different than the other rooms because I have it my way. So all we do is just like turn that into like 90 degrees, 180 degrees. Turn it toward Krishna. Have it be his thing. Like take something and make it as nice as you can for him, bit by bit by bit. So all these different injunctions are like different ways we can refine our service and make it sweeter for him, whether it's in a course of deity worship or chanting or our flower seva or our family, serving our family or our japa or whatever it is. Thank you.
I love the comment that 90% of spiritual advancement comes from japa. And when you look back at the comment that we made on the last chapter, the root cause of all offenses is inattentive chanting.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense, and that I don't know, I just drew that parallel, and it's just so important to remember that because we can get so busy. I've got my clicker here right now. Like we can get so busy and just do it well. Wow, we're supposed to be paying attention to something else. That's not the same.
Yeah. The root cause of offenses is inattentive chanting, and the root cause of avoiding the offenses is attentive chanting. So it's not to say that like, let's say you're doing something and you can't be fully attentive to chanting. Sometimes the question comes up like, should I just not chant if I can't give 100% attention to the chanting? My perspective, I actually asked my guru this, and he said also, it's not that you shouldn't chant. It's that you should try to have a core practice in your life that is as attentive as possible. And if above and beyond that, let's say you're just waiting somewhere, like you're at a red light and you're like in the car, and you're like, okay, I'm going to chant. And is this like part of my japa practice? I mean, yeah, but also maybe no. It's like, I'm just going to chant because I can, and just do that. And it's like, I still have to watch for pedestrians. Is there a bicyclist in the lane? And when is the light changing? That's okay. But don't let that be how you chant all your rounds. Have some chanting where it's like, it's me, you, and everything else is on hold, and I'm just here to chant your names. But above and beyond that, chant as much as you can. But now what happens is naturally, like we start to cut corners, and it becomes like then everything's on the go, and I never have enough time. And yeah, but that's everyone's excuse for everything. No one has time. If we try to just do something, just a little something where it's exclusively just for Krishna, have that be your core, then that'll grow. Because that's where you can really taste that maximum attentiveness. Thank you.
I appreciated when you said in the beginning of chapter 9 that bhakti is not about atonement, because I feel like it gives you an opportunity to have a different relationship with God instead of one is that you're living a more principled life or following these principles so that you could develop this relationship with God instead of having to ask for forgiveness for doing bad things. Like I feel like you're just learning to live a certain way that's more pure, that leads you to God.
Yeah.
As opposed to apologizing for all the bad things. Just live the right way or the way.
And that way, when and if you need support in adjusting your lifestyle or your habits, you go to Krishna because you understand that, hey, if I can do this better, then I'll actually have a better relationship with you. So please help. And then it's no longer like I go to him just to apologize, or it's like this weird material atonement thing. And there's actually like all my stuff that you and I both know I have, Krishna, I'm going to you because I actually want, what I really want is just to be your devotee. So you can also help me with that stuff so I can be more soft-hearted and have better habits and everything too. Really kind of, yeah, thank you. All right, we'll stop there. It's 8 o'clock, and let's read the 8th and 9th chapters, and then you can read ahead. And so for the homework, comment on anything you like, and also just please comment on share some way in which hearing about something that can be avoided in bhakti, some offense that can be avoided, has encouraged you how to deepen your practice, right? I want to hear about how at least one of these things to be avoided has become a positive for you. Like really do the work to transform that. Like, okay, so I heard, Shami Prabhupada Das heard that the root cause of all offenses in chanting your japa is inattentiveness. So I'm really feeling personally reminded and supported to just hone in on attentive japa starting today, right now. And that's my takeaway from giving the class. So what's your takeaway? You kind of like transform one little tidbit from that chapter 8, to a positive, a goal you have for your own practice to deepen your relationship with Krishna. Make sense? Jai. All right. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Nectar Devotion ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Thanks, everyone. And thanks for our online crew. Howdy ball. Have a great week.